We all know the legend, or at least have heard the name. The terrifying seafaring pirate who would put candles and fuses in his beard as he charged into battle, surrounded by a plume of black smoke. The captain of the Queen Anne's Revenge, the legendary pirate everyone knows. This is Blackbeard. We actually know very little about Blackbeard beyond his life at sea. We know that he died between the ages of 35 and 40, and that would place his birth around 1680. He was an English pirate between the years of 1716 and 1718. Before assuming his title of Captain Blackbeard, he was known simply as Edward Teach, or Thatch. The names change across those who tell the story. The last name Teach was printed in the Boston Newsletter, which was the most prominent paper in North America at the time, but those who interacted with the pirate refer to him by the last name Thatch, the spelling of which differs greatly. However, his true surname will most likely remain lost to time, as pirates would often hide their identities because of their nefarious activities. We know he eventually settled in the Bahamas, potentially after having been operating privateer ships during the War of the Spanish Succession, also known as Queen Anne's War. It is believed that Teach, before adopting the name Blackbeard, traveled from Jamaica to the uninhabited island of New Providence, which was overtaken by another pirate by the name of Henry Jennings. The harbor was large enough to fit hundreds of ships, but was too shallow for large military vessels. This allowed for not only Jennings' crew, but all other ships to experience a respite from the law and anchor their ships with safety. It was here that he joined the crew of Captain Benjamin Hornigold, acting as his lieutenant. Their fleet and crew expanded as they engaged in more and more acts of piracy. In 1717, Teach and Hornigold encountered another pirate ship with a crew of about 70 under the command of Captain Stede Bonnet, or at least I'm going to call him Bonnet. I think that's how you pronounce it. His crew was displeased with his leadership, and Teach took over command of the Revenge with Bonnet's blessing, shockingly enough. Later that same year, Captain Hornigold's crew was bored of his moral nature to only attack his old enemies and demanded his demotion.
You're fired.
Teach took the role with the crew's support, and Hornigold subsequently retired in 1717, taking 2 of his vessels with him. Later, he would accept the king's pardon, a kindness extended to a lot of New Providence's inhabitants. Blackbeard was left with his ship, Revenge, Bonnet's crew, and Hornigold's. To keep up with his plundering, Blackbeard commandeered a French vessel called Le Concorde. Now, this ship alone has a long history, and I'm going to tell you about it because I did all the research, and I pieced it together, and I'm going to tell you because I worked very hard and you're going to listen. So, it is assumed that the ship was made in Paris based on typical French techniques and styles. At some point, it fell into the hands of the British, most likely being sold, not captured. The British named the ship Concorde. Then, in 1710, it was captured by the French and swapped around until it turned into a slave ship called La Concordia de Nantes. I took French for 5 years, and I couldn't say this with a French accent nor correctly, so I'm not going to even try. In 1717, it found its final owner in Blackbeard, and he captured it to become his flagship. He equipped the ship with over 40 guns and 300 crew members. Or at least, that's based on a sworn affidavit that you guys will learn about later, but those numbers might not be entirely accurate. His previous work with Captain Hornigold was nothing to sniffle about, but it was not until Blackbeard sailed under his own flag that his infamy truly began to grow. He renamed the ship the Queen Anne's Revenge, which was a fitting title as the Queen Anne War had just concluded 5 years prior, and he was believed to have been a part of the Royal Navy in some capacity. Blackbeard only captained the vessel for about a year before its eventual downfall in 1718. As his flagship, Blackbeard and his crew captured numerous prizes and cargo. 2 months later, in December, Teach, on his flagship the Queen Anne's Revenge, his crew, and the 12-gun Revenge boarded the merchant ship Margaret. Can I pause and note, this man really likes the word revenge? Anyway, back to the merchant ship Margaret. Captain Bostock and his crew were held captive as the ship was looted, but were later released back into Bostock's control when they were done. Bostock immediately returned to his base on St. Christopher Island and reported the incident. He signed a sworn affidavit. Remember I told you that there would be a sworn affidavit? This is it. He signed a sworn affidavit that recalled his experience, stating Teach commanded 2 vessels. Quote, a sloop and a large French, Guinean, Dutch built with 36 cannons and a crew of 300 men. Bostock informed Teach of the royal pardon being extended to London pirates, but Teach was unsurprised by this news, appearing he already knew about the pardon. His affidavit is the first recount of Teach's appearance, stating he was a, quote, tall, spare man with a very black beard which he wore very long. There were also recorded mentions of his beard being braided into pigtails, sometimes adorned with ribbons. This spawned the now infamous nickname of Blackbeard. His appearance was also heavily decorated, taking to heart his role as a pirate captain and creating a style so unique to himself that his likeness would be replicated in media for years to come. Accounts of his appearance described him as tall, with broad shoulders. He wore knee-length boots and dark clothing topped with a wide hat and sometimes a long coat of brightly colored silk or velvet. Teach was also described in times of battle as wearing a sling over his shoulders with 3 braces of pistols hanging in holsters like bandoliers and stuck lighted slow matches under his hat. At the height of his prominence, Teach and his crew created a blockade to the port of Charlestown in the province of South Carolina. Any ships coming or going would be stopped and ransacked. The port had no guardship, so the crew had no real cause for concern. Over the next several days, 9 ships were stopped and raided. But despite his reputation, Teach never murdered any of his captives, though he would strip them of any valuables they may have been wearing. On June 10th, the Queen Anne's Revenge ran aground on a sandbar that damaged the main mast. In an attempt to free her from the sandbar, 2 other ships were run aground as well, leaving only the Revenge and another one of Teach's captured ships. It is believed that Teach purposefully ran the ships aground so that he wouldn't have to split his riches with as many people. During this time, Bonnet, the same captain whose ship Teach had taken control of a few months prior, set out to accept the king's pardon with some of his crew. Teach hung back, waiting to see what would happen to Bonnet first. The pardon was only available before September 5th, which we were in June, so plenty of time. But it only pardoned crimes before January 5th of that year, meaning that the last 6 months of piracy would not be covered under the pardon, which led Teach to concern. Most governors would waive this small detail and accept anyone willing to pardon, but Teach was not positive it wasn't a trap. Bonnet was spared, and he returned to Teach to inform him of the pardon's legitimacy, but found he had already left, stripping Bonnet's ship of any valuables. Eventually, Captain Bonnet and some of his crew were captured as they returned to a life of piracy and would be hanged later that year. Blackbeard did eventually accept the royal pardon in June of 1718, after marooning 25 of his men on an island. They would be saved a few days later by Bonnet. Teach and his much reduced crew accepted the pardon, and he settled in Bath for a few months before being sent to St. Thomas to look for work as a privateer, which they often did to help find pirates' work so that they would not be as rambunctious, return to crime. They wanted to keep them busy so that they wouldn't cause problems. However, Teach did return to piracy in August after he regained control of his remaining sloop and renamed it Adventurer. In November, the governor of North Carolina tasked Lieutenant Robert Maynard of the British Royal Navy to find and kill Blackbeard. Using the information they had gained from William Howard, Teach's former quarter member of the Queen Anne's Revenge, they knew of his current whereabouts. Teach was camped out on Ocracoke Island, enjoying his spoils with his crew of only 29 men. Lieutenant Maynard approached the island after waiting out the night until he could be more sure of the waters he was sailing through. 2 other ships surrounded the island to ensure Blackbeard could not rush to sea. After some minor cannon fire, the Adventurer headed out towards a narrow channel, and through some gunfire, Blackbeard had been run aground on a sandbar. Stuck, the Adventurer fired on Maynard's 2 ships that were following them. Many were injured and killed across both of Maynard's 2 vessels, eventually being grounded as well. Teach's men boarded the ship, but were startled by the surprise attack that Maynard had for them. He had ordered his men to stay below deck so that when the pirates boarded, Maynard would distract them at the stern, and at the sound of gunfire, all of his men would rush out and began to fight. Lieutenant Maynard and Blackbeard fired at one another. Only Maynard's bullet made contact. Both men drew their cutlasses, and Teach swung first. He managed to cut Maynard's cutlass at the hilt, leaving him defenseless. Maynard's men were able to push back the pirates and surround their captain with defense. Blackbeard still lunged to kill Maynard despite the clear disadvantage, but he was stopped when a soldier cut his throat. Defenseless and injured, Teach was attacked by several of Maynard's men and eventually killed. Blackbeard's body was found to have been shot 5 times and cut through about 20. Blackbeard's head was then suspended from the ship's bowsprit and then later placed at the entrance of Chesapeake Bay as a warning to other pirates. Blackbeard's flagship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, was located in 1996, and since then they have managed to recover 280,000 artifacts, which you can see at the North Carolina Maritime Museum. Blackbeard's legacy is greatly elaborated on in works of fiction, which brought about not only the idea of buried treasure, which was not a common practice among pirates, but they used Teach, aka Blackbeard's, likeness in creating further stories and lore about the captain. His image and name were used in several films, most famously being the captain of a ghost ship in Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl.
Remember the pardon, Thatch. We're to be subtle.
Says Ornagold, a pirate, now too proud to call himself one.
He prefers caution to cannons.
Caution's nothing without charisma. Or if a man plays the fool, then it's only fools he'll persuade, but appear to be the devil. And all men will submit.
And would you be the devil?
Or an audience. Aye. All a big show. Give your quarry something to fear. Some hellish thing from a fever dream. And men will drop to their knees, pleading for their lord before all else.
Oh, God. Looks fine.
Of course it does.
I find Blackbeard to be such an intriguing character, and I think that a lot of us also do. Thinking about the fact that he is a real person and comparing that to what we have heard of him in novels and stories and film and theater, I wonder how much of that could be comparable. Obviously, we don't know entirely what he acted like, sounded like, or did, but the fact that he wore his beard and pigtails and had such an extravagant appearance and would light matches and candles in his hair just to appear more menacing, there had to be some kind of theatrics behind this man. This man was out here being performative about being a pirate captain, which I absolutely love. And he is the image of pirates. When you think of a pirate, you think of Blackbeard. More so, when I first started writing this script, I actually wanted to talk about how SpongeBob has the character of Davy Jones. And then I started doing more research on Davy Jones and that entire concept to begin with. In SpongeBob, Davy Jones and his ship are ghosts that sometimes communicate with SpongeBob. If you don't know, you all know. We all know SpongeBob. But his likeness resembles that of Blackbeard, down to the pigtail beard. Now, Davy Jones was not actually a person, or at least what we believe the legend to be. It was more so a reference to the sea devil, or the devil of the sea. More so just the fact that a lot of people, sailors, pirates, anyone, would be lost at sea, and the term Davy Jones' Locker was a resting place of some kind at sea. Therefore, Davy Jones was the devil or death of some kind. This may have been based on a person at one point to have existed, but essentially the legend surrounds more that concept than anything else. But again, Blackbeard's appearance was so iconic that it's implemented in a lot of different facets related to piracy and the life at sea. And I am so happy that we were able to do this video and bring you guys this story, because I found a lot of what I learned very fascinating, and I would love to go visit the North Carolina Maritime Museum, because I want to know what they found. I saw some things about what they had found, but 280,000 artifacts is a lot. I would just love to be able to experience the Queen Anne's Revenge, which you can go scuba diving and see. However, they only take a certain amount of people, and I am certainly not qualified to be going down there and doing all of that. If you guys want to know more about the weird and mysterious, we talk about all of it on this channel. If it's a noun, we talk about it. People, places, things. So if you want more videos like this, please like, subscribe, and comment. It really helps us out on the algorithm. And we hope to see you next time. Bye.